Hey there, FlossTube. It's Cathy, the hands-on designer, and I'm here in the studio today to talk to you about the specialty stitches in the Autumn Folk chart from the Four Seasons Folk series. And I'm so happy to finally be able to talk about this one. I think I kind of talked about this when we did the new release video for this, that Autumn Folk was actually the first that I designed in the series because I taught it as a class. And then from there, the idea kind of grew that I would do all the seasons. So far I've done the videos for spring and summer. So I kind of feel like I'm coming home to autumn. Also happens to be one of my favorite seasons anyway. I love the colors. I love the themes. I love just, I don't know. I just love everything about it. All right, so here we have Autumn Folk. This time I actually do have the model. It's not out on a trunk show. So we have three different stitches in this one. We have what I call a modified rice stitch. We also have a herringbone. Now, herringbone in itself is a pretty simple stitch and it's a fun stitch. I think we've talked about it in some other videos. The herringbone stitch kind of tripped up a few when I did it in the class, mostly because it's what I call a nested herringbone. There's actually 4 different layers of the herringbone. So if you just take it row by row, it's super simple. I'll talk you through it. And then finally, we have the bound cross stitch. It's such a fun stitch. Lots of great texture in that one. So I'm going to go through the specialty stitches on linen first, and then I'll stop and I'll do them for Aida as well. And just to give you some idea of what the chart, here's your chart. That's available in shops now. And as I said, it's the 3rd in the Four Seasons Folk series. Now I am going to show you what the back, so this is our back page, but on that side of the page, as you can see, I do have diagrammed all of the stitches. So you maybe have already gotten through to this part of it. And I think I've done a good job with like numbering, that type of thing. So hopefully you shouldn't actually need this video, but sometimes I know we're visual people, so we really like to see it happen. So here in a moment, I'll be turning the camera down. I do want to note one thing. I did realize when I was reviewing for the video that here on the herringbone, instead of saying nested herringbone, I accidentally left the words chain stitch in, and that's left over from the previous chart because we did a, because I had several different words for that particular stitch. So that's a little goof. So no, we don't actually call herringbone a chain stitch. Just ignore that. Cross it out. So anyway, so I did make a few notes in here about the herringbone, the way to do the first row, and then the way to add the other rows, where I talk about nesting some of the threads underneath your previous threads. I'm going to demonstrate all that. So I know I wrote it in here, but sometimes it's just easier to see. And then here we have, of course, that final bound cross stitch. It's such a fun stitch. So let's get going. I've got my model here, and I've got my chart, and I'm going to start with some linen in my Q-snap. Now I'm just going to say this one might look a little different because the model is stitched on 32 count. It's actually Driftwood, Fabrics by Stephanie. I'm using an antique white, just so our stitches show a little bit better on it. And apparently I didn't have a big enough piece, so this is actually 28 count. So it might look a little more open than what it's going to look like on your actual piece, but I think actually that might be better to see as well. So, and then as I said, I will switch to the 16 count. And again, the number 12 pearl cotton, 642, 1 ball is really all you need for all 4 seasons. This is actually the ball that I stitched all 4 seasons. Plus this is on my 3rd video so far, and I've got plenty left. So like I said, 1 ball, share it with friends, you know, get together, stitch, and you all can share that ball. It shouldn't take that much of it. So anyway, all right, I think I am set up to go. So looks like Doggy's waiting to go out while I switch the video over. Animals, what can you say? Anyway, all right, I'll be right back. Okay, and we're back. So our first stitch that we're going to work on is what I'm calling the modified rice stitch. So we're going to look at the linen side for now. And the reason why it's actually a modified rice stitch and not just a rice stitch is because when I was choosing stitches to go in these band samplers, I wanted to make sure that they would work on Aida. So this is one I had to modify just a little bit. So if it was just a plain old rice stitch, these tie downs in the four corners, see the base of a rice stitch is this very large X, much like if you're doing a large, I don't know, just the foundation of a lot of different types of specialty stitches, a Smyrna, things like that. It's a large X, and then we tie down the four corners. Now in a regular rice stitch, we would actually come up, we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, there's your big X. Then we would have 5, but the 5 would actually come up at the center of your the foundation, and then come down in the center, and then we would come over here. So this would be 5, 6, then 7, 8, it would share that hole. Then down here to 9, 10, it would share that hole, come up here. And so basically you'd have an X that would be covered with a diamond. That's really what the main difference is. But here it's very easy, obviously, to do on linen because we're counting individual threads. Not as easy to do on Aida. So I am going to suggest, if you are stitching this on linen and you don't want to do the modified version, just go ahead and do a regular rice stitch. I didn't chart it in here, but if you Google it, if you can't remember how I did I would keep the numbering in the same. It's just you're going to come up and down in that center hole, so you'll share holes on the four corners of the diamond. I'm sure there's plenty of diagrams out there if you Google it. Now I did stitch the model. I had a moment where I thought, well, did I? Let's see. Oh, you know what? Apparently I went with that moment. I think when I originally did this for class, I stitched the model as the modified, but then I came back and I made a few changes as I was charting it for the actual chart that was to be released. So I did actually, it shows you how long since I looked that closely at it, I did actually do a true rice stitch here because I stitched on linen. So you can definitely make that change if you would like to. All right, so you can kind of see, you see that big X below, and then you kind of see that diamond, or heck, it's just a square. It just depends on your perspective. And let's see if I can, that just gets, that hole on the four corners is just shared with the 4 different stitches. All right. Okay, but for purposes of the video, I'm going to show you how to do the modified rice stitch. So again, I'm going to start with, we've talked about it in the first 2 videos, an away waist knot or a waist knot. Now it's easy to do a waist knot with this one. As you can see, since I'm a righty, I'm starting on this side of my chart and I'll stitch in this direction. So my thread will lay on the back side from where I put my knot down to where I come up over here. So I'll be covering that. That's a waist knot. Remember, a difference would be an away waist knot. I would have maybe placed my thread here and come up here. Then when I was done with my stitches, I'd cut the knot and then re-needle up and then bury my needle and thread underneath the stitches on the back. That's the basic difference between the waist knot and the away waist knot. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to come up with my first stitch. And in the beginning of the video, this is always kind of awkward. I know, I always apologize. Somebody told me, don't apologize so much. Well, I just sometimes feel like I need to. So I brought my needle up and I'm going to count down, actually in this case, 6 threads. Hold on, I'm going to make sure I started there. I'm wearing my cheater, so hopefully that helps me. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then come over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and down there. So that's down at 2. Then we're going to come back to this corner. So we'll count down that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 again. And I'm going to take a peek real quick to make sure I did that correctly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You got it. All right. Okay, and I'm back here. I wore my little magnifiers, but I think it's actually better if I don't wear any glasses at all. I love how your eyes are constantly changing. So that's down at 4. So see, we have that big X. That's what we did. Then I'm going to come up here, 2 threads away from where we went down. This will be 5. And we're just going to anchor down these long threads. I'm going to count down 1, 2 from the corner. And hopefully by now, I've had messages from a lot of you that are saying, you know, this is your first attempt on linen, and I love it. I'm so glad you did. But now you're beginning to see the groups of 2 threads as kind of like just a block. Like you're not even seeing the individual threads anymore. So now we're going to count over here. This will be stitch number 7. All right, which is 2 threads down from that top right corner. And we're going to go down there, 2 threads to the left of the top right corner. All right. Then we're going to come down 2 threads away from the bottom right corner. And then go up 2 threads away. And then we're going to cross that final leg. We're going to tie that down. All right, so there you have it. That's a modified rice stitch. Now, given, I'm thinking on the fly here, so given that I did do a regular rice stitch on my actual model, I'm going to demonstrate this stitch one more time, but this time I'm going to do an actual rice stitch, just so you can see the difference side by side. So I'm going to come up in that top corner. We're going to lay that big base in just like we did down 6 over 6. And of course, yes, I can use my previous stitches sort of as a guide. That's always the nice thing about having stitches like this next to each other. All right, so here's what a regular unmodified rice stitch would be. I'm actually going to find the center between the top left and top right corners. This would be my stitch number 5, and then I would come down to that. You could count 1, 2, 3, or find that center if you can just eyeball it. And we're really doing the same thing. Now we're going to come across to here. All right, there we go. This is stitch 7, 8. See, I'm just going right into that shared hole. Now we'll come down to stitch number 9 at the bottom. And this part gets a little easier because, like I said, you're just going to join up with that. You know, you're going to go into that shared hole. So that makes this last stitch super easy. You're just going to find that hole coming up in that shared hole on the far left and down into the bottom. So there you go. That's what you've got. Now you've got your modified rice stitch and just a regular good old rice stitch. This is a fun stitch because it brings a lot of texture. It's an easy one in different designs. If you want to say lay your big X in one color, then you want to do your tie downs in an additional color, or if you're using a hand dyed and you're using up a lot of thread in these type of stitches. So it really does show the color variation, even some of the more subtle hand dyed thread. So it's a lot of fun. I like this stitch. So that's the modified rice. All right, so I'm going to end my thread here. And we're going to go on to the herringbone. And I'm just going to talk you through this and show you that it's just not as scary. I'll tell you, it was kind of funny because we, of all the stitches, you know, there was a group of like, I don't know, there was a little over 100 people in class. And of everything in the class, anything that I thought would kind of stump them, I thought it would be not this. I don't know what it was that I thought it would be, but so we're going to do that waist knot again. Oops, I did not put a very big knot. So let me make a knot. That won't go, you know what, and I forgot this is 28 count, so it's got slightly bigger holes than what I was prepping for. All right, now we're ready. I'm going to trim that. I'm going to come down over here. And then we're going to come up over here. All right. Actually, I want to come up a little bit higher. Make sure I have enough room for all this on my... All right, so I'm going to come up, I grab this to show you. So we're going to come up at 1. We're kind of coming up on the top side of the stitch, and we're going to come down at 2, up at 3, down at 4, up at 5, down at 6, up at 7. Now the hardest stitch really to count, and I'm going to even say it's not that hard, you just have to take your time, is to make sure that you get stitch number 1 in correctly. Because then for your next stitch, you're just going to be counting back. So this is over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 threads, and then down 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's where you'll go down. Then you're going to come back this way, 1, 2, 3, 4 threads, and then count over that 8. So you'll have to count over the 8, but you use your previous stitches kind of as a visual. So once we get, first stitch in and then second stitch, then you'll count back. Now, if you don't want to have to count back, you can always, you see these line up. So you can kind of take your eye from here to here, and you know that your stitch has to come up in line with that, and then count forward. And once you get the rhythm of a herringbone, it's really quite a fun stitch, and it gives lots of great texture. I'm going to pull the model again and just show you. This is kind of why I went a little crazy and did 4 different rows of herringbone. It just gave great fun texture, almost like a basket. So we'll demonstrate the first row. I'm going to move my camera up just ever so slightly so I don't keep hitting it with my hand. All right, so I'm going to count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, then down 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go down. And if you could hear that little pop, that's because on this, since we were counting so many threads, I was letting my tapestry needle sort of glide across the surface and just popping on each little linen thread. That's a good way to count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bring your needle up. That's your first leg of your herringbone. Okay, so we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, those are your first 2 legs of the herringbone. So we're going to count back 4 again. 1, 2, 3, 4. And remember, I said this would kind of be lined up if you look at the chart with the stitch down there. So you could almost kind of visualize that one too. And we're ready to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you can see I didn't have to count down the 4 this time. I went from that stitch right there. And 1, 2, 3, 4. And herringbones can be all different sizes. They don't all have to be over 4 or up 4 over 8. I mean, they can be, you know, down to over 4. You know, they could be different sizes. It's really just kind of depends upon, really upon the space that you want to fill. So here's a fun thing. We could count, we know this is 4, so we could just go 1, 2, 3, 4. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, right there. All right, and then we're going to go back 4 threads and see now I'm kind of visualized from my point below. And if you start looking at your 2 threads as kind of, you get that feeling that it's just one block, you can even go 1, 2, 3, 4. It just kind of depends on how comfortable you are with linen. Everybody has their own little tips and tricks how to get comfortable with linen. All right, I'm just doing a few more so you can kind of see just the gentle motion as we go across the row. And I'm going to do one more here, and then we'll stop and we'll start getting ready for that next row, the nested herringbone. All right. Okay, doesn't that look pretty? It looks like a big W. All right, I'm going to park my thread over here. And I'm going to grab another needle. I threaded up a few of these to begin with. Let's see if I've got a bigger. Yes, okay. All right. So I'm going to demonstrate the next row for you. So I'll bring my needle over here. Now we are nesting these with 2 threads in between each row. There'll be 4 rows in all. So we came out here before. We're going to do the same exact motion, but we're going to count down 2 threads. All right, so we're going to come up there. So then what's nice about these next rows is that you really don't have to do all the counting, because you're just going 2 threads below the previous stitch to lay. So lay it, you see I counted down from that stitch that I had in the first. All right, and same thing, I'm coming back here. Now this is the part where some people start, this is 1, 2, then 3, 4. So I'm going to come up here. So I'm kind of paralleling this original stitch. So I'm going to come out 2 threads below. But you'll notice I went under the row, the first row. I didn't like grab this thread and kind of come under like that. I suppose you could if you wanted to. It would be a different look. I'm never going to tell somebody don't do that. The biggest thing I am going to tell you is, though, if you're going to do it on this row, be consistent and do it on all the other rows. I just think it's more fun to nest those underneath the previous row. And then you're going to do the same thing here. Now, I will admit, that's one thread. This is the spot where you want to come out, but I want to come out underneath that previous row. So I will say it is easier to come out like this, but what then I want you to do is to gently take your needle and run it under that previous row of stitches. Okay, so you can kind of see how that comes out from underneath the previous row. So while the row goes faster because you've got the previous row to use as a lineup, you do have to take a little bit of time to tuck that thread under. Okay, see, I'm going under that previous row. And when I come out over here, see, I can bring it out here and then kind of run it under, or if I really wanted to, I could take, I don't know if I can do this. Am I coordinated enough to do this? I can actually take another needle or something like that and gently pull that stitch aside so that we can tuck the needle, have the needle coming from underneath the previous row. Hopefully this explanation and demonstration is helping some, because I know in our HOD Stitchers group, we had a few people that were concerned. Okay, and here we go. So again, my needle's coming out this way. So I'm going to show you how I did that one more time. I'm just going to bring it out. And then I carefully just tucked under. Don't pierce through the thread. Just tucked under that stitch and go down. And what's nice about working with the one strand is you're not having to worry about laying threads or anything like that. And let's scoot this. All right. So there you go. I'll kind of move it around so you can sort of see. Each individual herringbone row looks intact. The second and then third and fourth that would get stitched next will tuck up under the previous row, hence nested. Now, somebody said, well, could you start at the bottom and work your way up? You can, but then you're fighting that on this side instead of the top side. So really, it just kind of depends if you want to do it on the bottom or if you want to do it on the top. Either way, I just think it really adds so much fun, cool looking texture to a piece. And I think just with a little bit of practice and just taking your time when it comes to getting the rhythm of the first row and then using the first row as a guide and for placing the second and third and fourth row stitches. But then just remember that one you have to, up here, you need to tuck under the previous. And again, you can also make a choice to go over the stitch and it'll kind of give you a little extra curve, which would have a fun look, especially if you're repeating that through the whole thing. That would also be a fun look. So see, there's never really a wrong answer. There's just like, hey, do that, but be consistent. All right. So we're going to end this thread here. And then we're going to go on to the really fun bound cross stitch. I'm going to trim some of these threads just because they're getting in the way. Why do I like the bound cross stitch so much? It's a fun little kind of waffle weave looking stitch. plus so much fun texture. And then what I did is it's basically like a big X. You're going to lay in these all your stitches, your 3 stitches going this way, and then you're going to cross back over them. So if you really think about it, it is kind of just a big cross stitch like that. But what you can do, and what I did in my piece, is you can change the direction of the base layer of stitches. So see, my base layer of stitches, I lay in that long center one first, then I come here and I do 2 other diagonal stitches and then go, over this way. But now on this one, you'll notice I laid in the foundation diagonal stitches going in this direction first. We have here and then we have here. And what that does is that gives you some fun texture, like almost like a basket weave. So just to show you, I did do that on the model. I alternated them. So you can kind of see, so doesn't it look really kind of basket weavy? Where you get this every other look. And then what I did when I created the second row of them, I started in the opposite direction. So you really it just amps up the texture factor even more. It's really cool look. It's just a lot of fun. I don't know, I just really have fun with these specialty stitches. I hope you are too. I've had a lot of messages from people saying, yeah, this is really cool. I can do these. These used to scare me. And that just makes me so happy. All right, let's demo. Demonstrate, demo. Woo, that's got like a whole other meaning. All right, so we're going to put in that waist knot. All right, we're going to do, we're going to come up here first. We're going to demonstrate that first one. So we'll come up here. And we are going to go over and up 6, excuse me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then go up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm just going to double check. Did I do that right? Yes, I did. Okay, so we've got instead of then crossing that X right away, we're going to go ahead and lay some other diagonal stitches in to create that foundation. So we're going to come up here at 3, which is 2 threads to the left of the bottom right corner. And we're going to come up here, 2 threads down. It's almost like a Scotch stitch we're laying in. And then we're going to come back here. 5, 6. All right, so all our foundation stitches are going in the same direction. Now you'll notice on these, on the numbering, I came up on this side and down here, up on the top left, and then I came up again down here on the bottom right and up to the top left, up at the bottom right to the top left. There's a very real reason why I did that, and that has to do with how your stitches are going to look on the front. If I had come up here or up down the lower right corner and then down at the top left corner, but then come up here, what would happen is the way that middle thread would lay, it would kind of bow. And I really want these to be nice and straight. That's why we're kind of always coming up on the same corner and down at the same corner. So if we look at the back, that's kind of, it does look like a little messy on the back. It's, we cross over. It's always kind of fun to look at the back and see, like, that's kind of the look you end up getting on the herringbone. Of course, I've got some other stitches in there, but sometimes I like to kind of go off a tangent and explain to you why we're actually putting these stitches in the way that we do. All right, so now we are ready. We've got our foundation laid. We're going to come up in the lower left corner. All right. And make sure that you, you pull your stitches. We don't want to pull them so much that it opens up a hole, but you'll see, if you just notice there right before I laid this stitch in, that last stitch I took kind of got a little loosey-goosey. All right, so here we go with our middle stitch of the top layer. And now I'm going to lay in the other 2 stitches that are just 2 threads away. put our final one in. And there you go. That is your bound cross stitch. Because really it's, you know, got diagonal lines like a cross stitch, but it just, since it's got those extra stitches in it, that's why they call it a bound cross stitch. So now if we were going to do another one, but we wanted it to be reverse direction, I would lay in the foundation stitches. I would come this direction first. We'll just do, I'll work my way through it so you can see. All right, getting ready to put the last stitch in of my foundation. All right, let's anchor the foundation. I hope everybody's having fun with these. I have really enjoyed them, and I definitely think you're going to see more specialty stitches now that I see a lot of stitchers willing to kind of take that on, and we'll definitely try our best to keep everything as Aida friendly as possible or make modifications. And that's, I think, what I really like about doing these. It's kind of a little challenge to my brain. It's like, I like this look. How can we do that so it works for Aida as well? So there, that's 2 bound crosses side by side. Hopefully I'll pull it down here so you can see a little bit better. Just when the light goes across your stitching, I know so many times when you're doing basic cross stitch, we always say no real rules, just try and cross them all the same way, because as the light goes across, we want that to kind of just be nice and smooth. But sometimes with these textured stitches, what we're looking for is it to grab the light and break up the pattern a little bit and create its own pattern. So that's kind of fun. However, if you're not into this look and you want them all to cross the same way, you know what I'm going to say, that works too. All right, so there we go. We have our 3 cross stitches, or our 3 specialty stitches. We have a modified rice stitch with a regular rice stitch. We have the nested herringbone, and I explained to you how to nest or tuck those stitches of rows 2, 3, and 4 under the previous row. And then here we have our bound cross stitch in 2 different ways. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to grab my Aida, and we'll demonstrate those in the Aida version as well. Be right back. Okay, and we're back, and I'm all suited up with some 16 count antique white Aida. Now, of course, the driftwood linen that the model's stitched on is a fabric by Stephanie, and she does dye her linens in Aida as well. So I've seen quite a few stitchers using the 16 count driftwood, and it is quite lovely. It's actually also lovely on her even weave as well. The particular Chari is our leader of this stitch along for the for autumn folk. Sorry, I didn't think about what I was saying there for a second. She's actually stitching hers with 1 strand on even weave, and the 1 strand makes it look very delicate, and it's lovely on the even weave. So super easy to change up your fabrics a little bit. I've even seen some of you completely going away from the driftwood and trying others as well, and it's simply lovely. So I just appreciate everybody has embraced this series. Anyway, so let's get going with the Aida version. So that, same page, but it's all the diagrams on the right of the page. So we're going to do our modified rice stitch much like we did the first one. So I'm ready to go with another waist knot. And I'm going to come up over here. Coming up in the top right corner, and I'm going to go down, over and down 3 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I always feel like I'm dancing when I do this, which is funny because I'm not really a good dancer. All right, so now we are coming up on the bottom right? 1, 2, 3. Is it a waltz? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to go down in the top right. And with the Aida, it's just super easy to visualize that. You'll notice I didn't even really count. All right, and then we're going to lay in steps 5 and 6. And we're just going to kind of work our way around the 4 corners with these just cute little tie down stitches. And like I said, if you ever use this stitch again, it would be kind of fun to maybe use a different thread color here. And I think you can hopefully see by now why I had to do the modification. Because with the regular rice stitch, I would be going down here in the middle. And yeah, we probably could do that on our Aida, but it would split that Aida row or block a little bit. And I don't know that I would like the way it would look too much. So I think it's perfectly acceptable to do this little modification. And just look how sweet that is. I just think that's wonderful. All right, so there we go, easy peasy. First stitch, I'm gonna park my thread over here. And let's get to that herringbone. I am going to trim this just a little. Oop, there we go. Trim it just a little bit. All right. And I've got my knot. Yes. So we're going to park it over here. And I'm going to come out over here for the top left corner of my herringbone stitch. And same thing, I think, you know, you have to get those first couple in before you start having those little guides. So we're going to go down 1, 2, and then over 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. To kind of help you with placement on future stitches. And then we're going to come back 2 blocks. Oh, I had it, there we go. And we're going to go up here 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, there we go. There's our first 2 stitches. So I'm going to come back 2. And remember, just like with the linen version, this lines up with that. So if that's not lining up, then you know something's not quite right with your counting. And then we're just going to keep making, I like this stitch because it's a little bit 2 steps back. And 1, 2, 3, 4 steps forward. And we're just going to keep up with this rhythm. Hopefully you do get kind of in a rhythm with the stitch. I'm going to put a couple more in before we go to that nested row, because I really want you to see that. We're really going to approach it the same way. I'm going to do just two more bonus stitches. And I'm not continuing to count because I kind of want you to get used to the rhythm. What do I mean by rhythm? The counting 4, the coming back 2, that kind of rhythm. All right, so there's a lovely little herringbone. So I'm going to park this over here. I'm going to trim that again, just so I don't have all that extra thread. And I'm going to grab a new thread. Okay, I'm going to park it over here as well. Now, I will say on these, it's much easier to do a waist knot on a stitch like the rice stitch. On something like the herringbone, because face it, our coverage on the back is not as much, I would do what I've talked to you about is the away waist knot. So I might park it up over here or off in this direction so that when I was done, cut my knot, thread back up, turn it over, and then weave the needle underneath these. Because you can see I've done all those stitches and nothing's caught. So that's okay. It just kind of, that really varies from stitch to stitch. All right, so we're ready to put row number 2 in. So now with the linen, it was 2 linen threads between each row. This is just going to be 1 block. All right, so we're going to come up right there. And again, remember I talked about it. Now, these blocks I think are a little bit easier because you're really just using the previous block as a guide. See, there's my first stitch. I'm not even really counting at this point. All right, so this one's going to get tucked up under there, under that stitch. So it's easy when the needle's going down to tuck. It's the coming up where it's not always quite as easy to tuck. So first time I'm going to just bring my needle up. I didn't pierce the thread. And then I'm just gonna run my needle under there. So the thread's coming out from below that first stitch. Okay. It's a little extra step in there, but I think it's a little easier than trying to hold the other one out of the way. And see, I can just go along nice and simple with this because, as I said, I'm using the previous row as a guide. Oh, come on, let's focus. I'm tucking that underneath the previous row. Okay, so if we wanted to, where's that scissors? There we go. Just like I did in the last demonstration. If I wanted to, let's see if I can do this two-handed. I can scoot that, expose that hole that I need to go up, and now I'm good to go. And you might find you like that rhythm a little bit better than trying to bring it up and then weave it under. All right, let's do one last time. I'm bringing it up, and then I'm just going to, it might help if I do this, if I kind of go this way. I'm going to put a little tension on there so you can see what I'm doing. I'm weaving my needle under that so you kind of, I don't say pick your poison. You got a couple different options here. I just like the look of the way they get nested under there. Just really creates some nice texture. All right, there you go. And then I would end off that row and I'd start back up here. Now, I don't know if I mentioned that. I did each row individually. So I did my herringbone across, parked my thread, and I rethreaded, and I started the second row here, and then I would do the same thing with the third row and the fourth row. It's easier than trying to kind of work your, like circle around and work your way back. So that's just what I'm going to suggest that you do. So there is your nested herringbone row. Let's park this thread and grab my next needle for the bound cross stitch. And of course, you know, you may have a way, I say this pretty much in every video, if you feel like there's a way that you can do it better and you get the same look, you go for it. This is the way I do it, and this is the way I teach. So All right, so we're going to do our bound cross stitch. I parked my thread. I'm going to come up in the lower right, and we're going to come up and over 3 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's that first foundation stitch. Then I'm going to put a diagonal line 1 block away on the bottom side and the top side of the middle diagonal line. And we're going in that kind of circular direction, always coming up on the same side and down on the same side. All right, oops, I got a little knot. There we go. And I'm going to come up in the, we're going to cross all that, come up in the lower left, go to the upper right, and then my next 2 little diagonal rows. There you go. That is your bound cross stitch. And then of course we can do the same thing. I'll do that quickly just to kind of demonstrate because we don't want to shortchange the Aida. Let's come up here. Lay the center of the foundation. And then our remaining diagonal stitches of the foundation. Then let's finish that stitch up here. To the top left. 2 more stitches to go. I just think this one's a fun one. It's a nice filling stitch, great texture. What do I mean by filling stitch? It's a term probably used a little bit more in needlepoint when you're trying to fill a space. Get my camera to stop shaking there. All right, there you go. There's your 2 stitches. I think they just look super fun side by side. Okay. There you go. So now you've got your Aida bound cross stitch, or excuse me, modified rice stitch, your nested herringbone, and then your bound cross stitch, as well as the linen version of all 3 of those stitches. So hopefully this helps you complete your chart. Keep posting with the HOD Autumn Folk SAL, and make sure to tag Hands On Design and Chari, because we like to see what you're doing so we can ooh and ah over it. I hope that you're again enjoying this series. We've got 1 more to go, and that's Winter Folk, and I'm excited for you to see that, but all in due time. Let's enjoy the fall first. So enjoy the stitch. We'll see you next time.